Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, November 4th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Rutgers game is 3 days away, and the game against Michigan is in 38 days. Wednesdays, we generally try to have a beat writer who covers the Buckeyes' upcoming opponent on to preview that weekend's game. This week, however, we're lucky enough to have a Rutgers football expert right on our Buckeye Scoop staff. Alex Gleitman is a recruiting analyst at Buckeye Scoop, but lives in New Jersey and also covers Rutgers. So we're going to talk to him about both the Buckeyes and the Scarlet Knights. Alex, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, Tom, anytime. This is going to be a fun weekend. Always is for me. I'm actually thankful this year the game is out in Columbus because that means next year, hopefully, when we are allowed to attend games, it will be out here in New Jersey, and that's always a fun weekend and day for me. So, you'll be in the stadium, which is nice. But sorry to all the Ohio State fans who won't get to see this one from the shoe. But I'm kind of happy about it.
Yeah, not too bad. I think that Ohio State is happy, like the Oregon game is in Columbus next year and not this year. Penn State, I think, was not thrilled to have an empty house last weekend for the Ohio State game. That's one of their big ones as well. So last year, that Ohio State Rutgers game, I was there, and it just, I think to just about everyone there, it felt like just kind of a huge waste of time. They had an interim coach. The talent level was just abysmal for Rutgers at that point. Ohio State's backups probably would have won by a couple touchdowns. This year, though, things are already looking pretty different under Greg Schiano. So what has been the big change there for that program?
Well, yeah, I'll actually say last year's game, though, might have been their closest game in a few years, actually, against Ohio State. It was an improvement. I think they scored, 21 points. So tip your cap to Nunzio Campanile for finding a few things there. And, the Rutgers crowd stayed. Those who did stay till the end were super pumped about that. But no, I think this year with Greg Schiano taking over, Ohio State fans obviously have their opinions about Greg. I thought he did a pretty darn good job in 2016. They had one of the best defenses in the country. They probably don't win that Michigan game without his defense there. 2017, sans the Iowa game, thought they also had a pretty good defense as well. And then 2018, things kind of fell apart. And then Ryan Day didn't bring him back. He sat out a year, and Rutgers ended up hiring him. And I think there was probably, out of realistic candidates, he was really the only one who I felt made sense for Rutgers if they ever wanted to get back to respectability. He understands the state of New Jersey. He understands how to win at that school. He's done it once before. He's taken them from the basement, from the cellar, and made them, I think at one point they might have been ranked like 2, or they were definitely in the top 10 in that 2006 season. Obviously, the Big Ten and Big Ten East is a little bit different than the Big East, but, Big East was competitive back then with teams like West Virginia and Cincinnati was pretty good back then, and South Florida. But, I do think that the big thing with Greg is he just understands how to build a culture at that school, and he's gotten buy-in. He has credibility out here. These kids who grew up, what are they now? They're 18 to 22 years old in the year 2020. So they were kids when Rutgers was actually exciting to watch here in New Jersey. So they grew up respecting Greg Schiano, and I think him coming back automatically, there wasn't respect earned there. It was already respect given. And I think that was a big piece of him being able to change the culture already, to them accepting the fact that they're a doormat in the Big Ten, to them fighting and clawing and making you fight and claw for every single yard and point that you're going to get this year. Now, is the talent level where it needs to be? Absolutely not. Did Greg bring in some transfers and things like that and some key recruits late in the cycle? Absolutely, he did. So I think there's some progress that has been made on the personnel end. I think there's a long way to go, though, for them to be where they want to be. But I think some of the changes he made in getting some talent in there immediately, the culture change, just the mindset change, the scheme change. I think it's just made them a tougher team, at least on the defensive side of the ball. I think they got a little bit of way to go on offense. But I think, I think obviously I think it's going to be a pretty lopsided game this weekend. But you saw they beat Michigan State in week 1. They haven't won a Big Ten game in over 2 years. I think last week against Indiana, at least they were more competitive than what we're used to seeing. So I think things are going in the right direction. I think it's, again, culture change, the respect he has, and then some of those immediate changes he's been able to bring into the program from a personnel perspective.
I mean, you mentioned the culture change a couple times there. PJ Fleck has row the boat. Greg Schiano's version of that is keep chopping. So explain what keep chopping means.
Yeah, so the first time around when he was at Rutgers, that was kind of their mantra. It was just keep chopping, as in like keep chopping wood. I mean, you put your axe into that tree or that piece of wood the first time, you're only going to make a dent, but you do it again, it's a bigger dent. Again, it's a bigger dent. And eventually, the tree falls down or the wood breaks, right? And I think that's just, it's almost like when coaches say get 1% better every day, or, just cliches along those lines. It goes along with that. And so, he came into this program at a place. They were definitely probably worse the first time around, which is really weird to say because they were in a pretty bad place when he's taken them over. And I think this isn't going to happen overnight. You have to just keep chopping every single day. Every single rep you take in practice goes toward that. And, little by little, they're going to get better and better, and they're going to eventually get to where they want to go. This isn't, Urban Meyer coming into a 6-7 Ohio State program and going undefeated the next year. That's not going to happen at Rutgers. This, could be a 2-year, 3 years to get just to a bowl game. And then, from 6-6, how do you get to 8-4? And then how do you get to 10-2? And then could you potentially get to a point where you're competing for a Big Ten championship, maybe a national championship? I don't know. I mean, if they can keep New Jersey's talent home, maybe. But the point is keep chopping until you get to where you want to get. And they've certainly taken a nice step in just a couple of weeks here in the 2020 season.
Well, I mean, you said it was not going to be an immediate turnaround, but I mean, it took exactly one game for everyone to kind of go, oh, look at that. It was week 1 against Michigan State. They jump out to a 28-10 lead, had a 38-20 lead in the fourth quarter before the Spartans scored a late touchdown. It was like, oh, okay, look at Rutgers. And, 38 points against a Big Ten team. Wow, that's really impressive. And you kind of look underneath at some of the stats, and it's like, oh, they averaged 3.9 yards per play. And a lot of that was creating 7 turnovers on defense. Against Indiana, again, like it was a respectable game. They lost 37-21, only averaged 3.6 yards per play. This does not look like an offense. I have not watched every snap of Rutgers, but I've watched a little bit and gone through the stats a little bit. It doesn't look like an offense that has a lot of big play potential. So, what does the Ohio State defense need to sort of look out for this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, they don't really have a lot of big play potential. Bo Melton at receiver is kind of a game breaker type. Aaron Cruikshank, who's actually a transfer from Wisconsin. If you guys watched the Rose Bowl last year, you saw him take a touchdown on a kick return back for the Badgers last year against Oregon. So they do have some speed with those two guys. But other than that, I mean, there's not much at receiver. Noah Vedral was a UCF, transferred to Nebraska, followed Scott Frost. Couldn't win the job there, was their backup. Actually played a few games last year, and now as a grad transfer at Rutgers. He's been pretty mediocre. So they don't really have a ton when it comes to quarterback and receiver. And then their offensive line really isn't all that great. So you add those things together, and it's kind of that's why you're seeing what you're seeing as far as 3.6, 3.9 yards per game. I do think their running backs are pretty good. They have a few guys: Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Young. They have Kayron Adams from the state of Ohio. So they do have a few pretty good players. Obviously, they could give the ball to Cruikshank and whatnot on jet sweeps and things like that. So there are some things they could do on the ground, but I think the wrinkle to potentially look at is Johnny Langan, a guy who played against Ohio State last year. He's kind of like a Tim Tebow light in the sense that I actually think he should be playing tight end or linebacker. He's that just tough of a kid and whatnot, but he's not a great passer, but he's a pretty good runner. He gashed Ohio State a few times on the ground last year. And I think, there could be some packages for him this weekend, given, what Rutgers offensive coaches are going to see, looking at the film. Now, last week, I thought Ohio State did a great job in containing Sean Clifford and really taking away that QB run, which Penn State clearly tried to do early in that game. So, I think that is something Rutgers could try. So Ohio State needs to take that away. Again, I think no matter what, they should be stacking the box and forcing Rutgers to beat them with their arm. I don't think this is Sean Clifford throwing to Jahan Dotson on the outside as it was last week in single man, sometimes loose at the end of the game type of coverage. I mean, I think I would force Rutgers to beat me that way because, I think their running game is, if you're going to say there's a strength, I think it's the running game for Rutgers.
Well, and on defense, they've been, the offense hasn't been great, but the defense has actually looked pretty solid. They held a pretty good Indiana team to 5.3 yards per play last weekend, just 2.7 yards per rush. I mean, that's like legitimately a good defense. And there are some familiar names on that defense. I mean, you mentioned Cruikshank having played in the Rose Bowl. Someone else who played in the Rose Bowl, Brendan White with Ohio State. He had 12 tackles against Indiana last week for Rutgers. Trey Avery, who Ohio State recruiting fans might remember as Kareem Felder, he had 5 tackles last weekend. Former Michigan defensive lineman Mike Dwumfor had 4 tackles. Former Michigan linebacker Drew Singleton had a couple tackles. I mean, these are names that you might not have thought about for a little while, but they are names that you probably, if you think back, you know these names. That's obviously the side of the ball where Schiano made his name. So is this just better talent, better scheme? Like what's the why are things working a little bit better for Rutgers on defense this year?
Yeah, one other guy I want to call out that Ohio State fans will know is defensive tackle Malik Barrow, who played Ohio State, went to UCF, and now is at Rutgers as a graduate transfer. So that's another guy you'll see out there a little bit on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, they brought in, I don't know, it was probably like 5 or 6 transfers on the defensive side of the ball. And there's another guy actually that Ohio State recruited pretty hard and wanted in Peyton Powell, who has not been ruled eligible yet, that's going to play cornerback for Rutgers. He went to Baylor to play quarterback and ended up transferring to Rutgers as a grad, or not as a grad transfer, as a transfer, but his eligibility hasn't been ruled on yet. So they even have more talent potentially coming if Peyton Powell's ruled eligible at some point. I think, these transfers have done a really good job of boosting the talent level on that side of the ball, especially on the defensive line. I think they have 4 transfers coming in from Power 5 programs on the defensive line. So that's definitely helped out a little bit. I think they actually already had some talent on that side of the ball. I mean, their linebackers are pretty good, and all of them were recruited by Chris Ash and the previous staff at Rutgers. And I think, you take talented guys and you put them into a system where they can succeed, which it seems like they're in right now, that they totally bought into. They get it. They're playing aggressive football. And, I think you're seeing the results that, you've gotten through the first 2 games. Now let's see how they do against the Big Ten's best offense, possibly the country's best offense this week. I think that will be a big test for them and show them really, truly where they are when it comes to how far away they are from competing for a Big Ten championship, at least on that side of the ball. But, I think the transfers have helped. I think they do have some veteran guys who were able to adapt to the system easier versus the offensive side of the ball, where they have a new offensive coordinator in Sean Gleason, who didn't really get to implement his system with a little bit of a younger, inexperienced group on the offensive side of the ball versus the defensive side of the ball. So, I think all those things contribute to Rutgers defense being pretty stout this year. And I think they're going to give Ohio State, I'm not going to say Ohio State's going to have a ton of trouble, but I do think it's not going to be as easy as it maybe has been in past years. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, Rutgers has not scored a touchdown in either of their last 2 visits to Columbus. So, I mean, what does success look like for Rutgers this weekend? I'm guessing that they're not really, if you got them to tell you the truth, they're not going to come here thinking they're going to win. But, if they're competitive into the second quarter, is that a win? If they're within a couple touchdowns at halftime, like what does success look like this week? What would Greg Schiano walk out of Ohio Stadium on Saturday night saying, that wasn't too bad. That was okay. That was a step forward.
Yeah, I don't know if you could quantify it. I think it's just got to be a feel. Like, was it, in the past it's been, I mean, some of these scores have been ridiculous and they could have been worse. They were probably being nice to Chris Ash a couple of those years. And I just think it's, does Rutgers look like they can be competitive, like kind of like an Indiana in a few years? I guess that's how I'm looking at them. I mean, obviously they'd love to be in a somewhat competitive game at halftime. I think they would probably all consider that a win. I think if you wanted to quantify it, what's the spread right now? I don't know. I think it opened at 37. It might be like 39 or something. I mean, covering that spread would be a good first, I think losing by 28 or less points is probably a win in their book. If they, you lose something like 38-10, I mean, obviously it's not a ton of points on the offensive side of the ball, but holding Ohio State under 40, I think would be a good win for the defense. And, maybe scoring 17 or more on offense would be a win for that unit. But, I don't think you could quantify it. I just think it's going to be a feel. I think you're going to look at, you've seen these Rutgers games in the past. I mean, you mentioned it, Tom. It's almost seemed like a waste of time. So many people left at halftime last year in the past games that I've been to. I think, you want to walk away from there if you're Rutgers and say, I feel good about, the long-term potential of my program and being able to compete within Ohio State within 3 to 5 years. So we know there's a huge talent gap, but if we start to close that talent gap, could we be in a situation like an Indiana's been in the past where maybe it's the last drive or maybe they need overtime to beat us, something like that?
Well, that will take care of the long-term potential for Rutgers. One of the things that's going to have a big impact on the long-term potential for Ohio State is the 2022 recruiting class. And your weekly ADEC column at BuckeyeScoop.com dropped on Tuesday. Had a ton of great information in there, as always, including your final picks for a pair of 22 recruits who are announcing their decisions pretty soon. And if you want to read those, you can check that out at BuckeyeScoop.com. You also listed 14 really highly ranked 2022 guys who have not yet set decision dates, but who Ohio State is in on and who have shown at least some interest in the Buckeyes. 7 of them are 5 stars. They already have 1 5-star in the class, Gabe Powers. This is 7 additional 5 stars they could potentially add. You ranked them on how likely you thought they were to end up as Buckeyes. Can you share like one guy from that group of the 14 guys that you had who you think the Buckeyes are looking pretty good for, and one who you think is maybe, some of the people are talking about that you think is a much bigger long shot?
Yeah, I'll start with the long shot. I think offensive tackle Zach Rice. I think Ohio State's in a top group for him. I just don't think that they are the top school right now. I mean, you saw, maybe you didn't see, but there was an Instagram. I think he had like an Ask Me Anything, and he asked about Ohio State, and he kind of mentioned that Coach Stud, hadn't really spoken to him in a while and things like that. And now all of a sudden he's like trying to join in the fun of what's going on Twitter with all these guys and things like that. And I'm just not buying the smoke. I mean, I've heard from a few people that Zach Rice could be one of these guys that's supposed to, be included in this epic haul of 2022 recruits, a recruiting run that's supposed to happen for the Buckeyes. I'm just not buying it. I mean, I think Notre Dame might be the team to beat there. I think Ohio State's going to be in it. I think if he takes official visits, Ohio State definitely could get an official visit, which absolutely gives them a chance. But right now, at this point, I think I put a confidence level of 2 on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident. And so I don't feel that great about Zach Rice at the moment. Things could change, but that's just how I feel right now. As far as who I am confident in, I mean, there was a few guys and some pretty big name guys, but one guy I want to say is Damari Alston, a running back out of Georgia. I think, he's got a lot of Southern schools on him. He's going to have his ranking. I don't think actually matches how high he is on the boards of Ohio State and Alabama and Florida and some really big time programs across this country. I think he is a 5-star type of talent at running back, or a very high 4-star type of talent. And, I think this is a kid that Tony Alford's done a great job of building a relationship with. I think Ohio State is the leader right now. I think I put a confidence level of 7 in there just because I do think visits are going to happen, and that visit's going to have to go well for Ohio State to land Alston. But I think, if he does get to Columbus whenever visits open up and the visit goes well, I could see a commitment happening then or shortly after that. So I think Damari Alston could be, I don't know if they're going to go 2 running backs again, or one, stud and one kind of like high upside guy. I don't know if they're going to be able to get 2 studs after they got 2 this year. Everyone's talking about Nick Singleton. I think, he's in the mix. I think Penn State's a big threat there, but I think Damari Alston's going to be the guy for Ohio State.
All right. And before we let you go, I have to let you plug your Around the Oval podcast for this week. Your guest is an absolute legend in some circles of the college football internet. You told me you were getting him on. I was really excited. It was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you have got this guy on. But I know there are a lot of people who might not be the personification of the sickos meme, where the real college football minutia lover that I am and some of our audience members are. So for the people who might not be familiar with the legend of Rutgers Al, please let them know what to expect on this week's edition of Around the Oval.
Yeah, so I'm either going to release this today, Wednesday, or Thursday. I'm going to have to also record a segment with Richie Schneiderite, who's the publisher of the Rutgers rival site, The Night Report, who I also write for, to kind of give you the real nitty-gritty analysis. But what you can expect in the first half from Rutgers Al is, you know, there's a lot of, you would think, you know, Rutgers fans are pretty realistic, maybe even pessimistic in their outlook on their team, but that is not Rutgers Al. This guy, they could be not have won a Big Ten game in years, and he will go through his season preview in all seriousness with eternal optimism for this program. I mean, he is, you said it, he's a legend on these message boards, 24/7 Sports, Rivals, other places for these bold predictions, game by game or season predictions, where he truly believes Rutgers is, you know, going to come out on top and defy all the odds and things like that. And, you know, he does it in a fun and entertaining way. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but this guy it's definitely going to be a must watch, must listen for Ohio State fans, for Rutgers fans out there. You know, he's been around the boards for a long, long time, as long as I can remember. He's always coming to visit. You know, he's a Rutgers fan. He'll come to the Ohio State board during Ohio State game week and kind of give his thoughts and things like that and banter back and forth with the fans. So, I mean, this guy is, you know, he's dead serious. This isn't like an act or him joking around or anything like a spoof. I mean, he truly believes. I don't know what he's going to predict this week. I'll wait to see. But like, there's no doubt in my mind he predicted Rutgers to beat Michigan State. I did too, but Michigan State and Indiana. And I wouldn't be shocked if he comes on and says, you know, Rutgers is going to pull off the upset of the century against Ohio State. So it's definitely going to be a good listen. I think you're going to get two different views on Rutgers, one from Rutgers Al and one from Richie, which are going to be certainly, I'll call polarizing probably, but I think it's going to be a good listen and really fun to record for me.
Yeah, I am definitely looking forward to that one. That should be a really fun show. And also make sure you check out Alex's ADEC column on BuckeyeScoop.com that dropped on Tuesday. And as I said, 14 guys from that 2022 class. I mean, that class has talked about breaking the internet, and that you know, this is you know, there could be huge things on the horizon. And Alex went through 14 guys, all really big name guys, and just let you kind of know like where he thinks it really stands. You know, what's for real and what's not right now. Really good insight there. So that is just one of the wonderful things you can get if you are a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. And if you're thinking about becoming a member, I shared this yesterday. Here's a little life hack. Just make coffee at home twice this month. And the money you save by not going out and buying coffee, congratulations, you've paid for a month of BuckeyeScoop.com. You're welcome. Not too big of a sacrifice there. And you get access to our incredible team of insiders: Bill Green, Mark Givler, Alex, Tony Gerdeman, Kirk Barton, Nevada Buck, Stephanie Odie, Kirk Barton. Did I say Kirk Barton already? I think I did. Ross Fulton, who I just had on yesterday. Yes, I mean it is an absolute murderer's row of insiders who know and do what they do the best in the business. So it is worth your time, worth your investment. This is you know, Ohio State has just cleared one of its major hurdles on the way to another potential Big Ten championship and a college football playoff. This seems like a really good time to hop on and get some insider access that you just can't find anywhere else. That's all at BuckeyeScoop.com. Also, make sure you check out all of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, all those great places where you go to find podcasts. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all those shows. You can subscribe right there. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review while you're at it. That'll do it for today. That was a long show with a lot of Rutgers talk. So we'll be back tomorrow with another show. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.